All right, I just hit live. Just
Okay.
preparing. I think we might be live. So if you guys are seeing, there's another bar that's
Yeah, we were
seeing we're
live.
redirected.
We're live. I
Okay,
got
cool.
the.
Hey everybody, this is Tim Picciott, the Liberty Advisor, along with John Snyson, the Economic Truth. And obviously, there's been a ton of stuff that's gone on in the financial markets the past week. So originally, we are probably going to do these every 2 weeks, but obviously, with things deteriorating as quickly as they are, we thought that it was important to get you guys the data as quick as possible. So I think what we're going to do to start off with here is just kind of go over the past week and recap the major markets. We have the Dow Jones finished down at negative 12.36. S&P is down 11.49. This is for the week. NASDAQ down 10.44. Even gold down 3.57 at 1566. We've got silver at down 10%. Bitcoin down 11.9% for the week. We've got the 10-year Treasury sitting in at 1.163 and the 30-year Treasury at 1.684. I mean, that is an absolute all-time low. 3-month at 1.298. And then we've got oil all the way trading down at $44 a barrel. But I mean, to have a 3-month bond trading at 1.298 and having a 30-year bond trading at 1.684 just goes to show you that things obviously are not going well. And just to let people know, the reason that happens, what we call an inversion in the yield curve, is that if people think that things are going to get worse and worse and worse, and they think that let's say they think that the Fed might cut rates again, which I think at this point it's pretty much a given. If we think that maybe we might even have negative rates. Then all of a sudden now, let's say a year from now, if the rate's actually negative, so people would rather lock in 1.68. Now, am a financial advisor, and this is the one time that I'll actually say, like, you probably should not be buying 30-year bonds. And if you are, you should come talk to me because there's much better things to do. But people would rather just lock in 30 years at 1 point, whatever it is, 1.684, then have to risk rolling over these short-term ones, and all of a sudden their short-term ones turns into a negative. And then you're one of these companies over in Europe that are actually, the banks over there in Europe are actually just stockpiling actual physical cash, because if it costs them money to give their money to the European Central Bank or Bank of International Settlements, then they'd rather just hold on to physical cash. And so they're actually running out of vault storage, and it just goes to show how more centralized planning has messed things up. Now, there is one investment out there that has done really well, and that's if somebody made a bet on the VIX, the volatility index, that skyrocketed all the way to 40.11, up 23% for the week. And Mr. Tim Picciott, yours truly over here, had a put option portfolio that he bought. I bought in January 15th, and that, as of yesterday, was up 181%. And what we used that small portion of the portfolio to hedge against the market. And so we participated with the market going up last year. On average, our core stock portfolio was up about 25%. And then this year, the spot checking clients are anywhere from about +4 to -3 year to date. And a lot of them have a lot of gold outside of the holdings they have with me. They have some Bitcoin outside of me. So if you actually count their full picture of their net worth, I mean, a lot of people are still sitting pretty, because in the grand scheme of things, Bitcoin still is doing pretty well on a year to date.
Yeah, and gold is up 22% on the year.
Yeah, and gold is up 22% for the year. So, I mean, a lot of our clients are doing really well. Not to make this big commercial, but we're taking a look. One of the things I saw yesterday, because John is always talking about the collateralized loan obligations, always talking about the collateralized debt obligations, which probably doesn't make him a big hit at most parties, but it's something that I like to talk about. But yeah, I was perusing the Bank of International Settlements website, because that's another popular thing to do on a Saturday night. And we see Basel Committee meets to review vulnerabilities and emerging risks, advance supervisory initiatives, and promote Basel III implementation. This is from the 27th of February, so just a few days ago. And basically, the main thing they wanted to meet about was the committee reviewed vulnerabilities associated with leveraged loans and collateralized loan obligations among financial participants. Banks have the largest direct exposure to these markets, blah, 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 blah. And so I'm not an expert in this, but the guy who is an expert on this is one of my best friends and co-host of the Tim and John show, John Snyson. So if you want to take us away and let people know what a CLO is, what a CDO is, why people should be concerned about this, and some of the big black swans that you see on the horizon associated with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, 100%. So let me share my screen here, Tim. Just 1 second here. I'm gonna get the screen share up and going, and then you guys can actually see here. So just hold on a second. No, wrong. We're not gonna leave this meeting. Okay, so if you take a look here, for example, we got a report that just came out. Well, it came out and this is the report that came out for the first half of 2019. And it's what is the report called? It's called the Securitization Data Report, and it's by SIFMA, which is AFME, actually, Finance of Europe, and they're actually going through all of the information on the issued derivatives out there. And as you can see here, for example, you could see that the derivatives that have been issued here, you could actually see the European derivative is not even close to high issuance as, for example, the American issuance here. You basically double here. We're looking, no, it's not a double, it's tenfold of what the European
Yeah, and we will have
issuance are.
people who are going to be listening to this on a podcast. So if you want to even kind of let people know about some of the actual numbers too, in case
Yeah.
by audio.
So just to give you an example here, so just the first quarter of 2019, it was issued in Europe. They issued $32.4 billion. And when I say $1 billion, it doesn't sound like $1 trillion. You hear about the derivatives. These are the underlying assets. These are the actual physical assets that get securitized, that are underlying to the CLOs that they sell for, mass market. That's where you see, the trillions come in. But the underlying assets was in the first quarter 32 in Europe, and then in the second quarter it was 60.7 billion. And for example, in the United States, it's as much as 364.7 in the first quarter, and then 439.2 in the second quarter. Now, the trend here, Tim, is actually showing a downward trend if you look at the 2018 numbers. And the first time ever there was a downward trend in the CDOs. Remember the CDOs from back in 2018, that had underlying mortgages that, went belly up, the ninja loans, basically. So you saw those going belly up back in 2008. And what happened was that in 2007 was the peak. 2008, it just went lower and lower in issuance because they collapsed, basically. So what you saw is we were seeing the trend now that there's a downward trend that has been upwards ever since, as you can see here, 2010. Let me just go through some numbers there for our podcasters as well. So 2010, it was 1.24 trillion. Then it went down a little bit in 2011. It was 10.06. 2012, 1.60, and 1.56 trillion, and 1.19, 1.74, 1.86, 1.89. And now you're seeing a downtrend in 2018, which was the highest year of issuance so far of collateralized loan obligations. But then 2019 seems to be a year that's even going to be it's going to be lower for one of the first time. 2018 was the lowest year of issuance of these collateralized loan obligations. So it's quite interesting to see the downwards trend that is starting right now. I also want to show you something else here, which is quite interesting, because this comes back to, remember, the Big Short movie where they're talking about the rating agencies and how the rating agencies, were all colluding with the financial institutions. Well, me and Tim on our last report, if you looked at it, me and Tim actually, it was very interesting. We went through the share price of Moody's, and the share price has just skyrocketed. Compared to the banks, for example, most of the banks are down. I have in my report, my 2020 global risk report, I have all the bank shares of the major banks, and almost all of them, except for Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, was the only banks that actually have tick in share prices. Everybody else is basically lower or severely in the negative over the last 10 years. But this is interesting. So take a look at these stats here. In the issuance of AAA rated derivatives. This is insane, Tim, because even if the country has AAA rated derivatives. Really, the underlying assets from corporates and for everybody else should not be AAA. Like the nation is, looked upon as a AAA rated, entity, and then everything else below that should be rated below that of the actual sovereign nation. So when you take a look at, like, for example, the U.S. is still AAA rated, which is insane.
And half of all of the investment grade bonds, which is triple B and above, over half of the investment grade bonds are right at triple B. And there's certain stats are out there, which I went over in my presentation that I gave down in Acapulco, which I highly recommend you guys check out. But as part of that presentation, we talked about, that there you can expect, anywhere from like $600 to $800 billion next recession to get moved from triple B down to double B, which will then create a cascading effect as these mutual funds and different index funds that are investment grade funds have to then force sell because those bonds will no longer be investment grade, which then creates more forced selling, which then creates a whole basically cascading avalanche effect. And so what are you showing right now up on the screen?
Well, I'm showing exactly what you're talking about, Tim. And this is interesting. So this is actually the non-financial institutions, so not basically corporations and their debt. And if you take a look here, so we'll go to just 1 second here. So this is less than 1 year. And this is the actual credit rating for those corporates. And you can see here, Tim, what exactly you're talking. It's actually worse than what you're talking about right now. And these are S&P numbers, so Standard & Poor's own rating numbers.
And that's the thing. A lot of times we paint a bad picture, and a lot of times it ends up being even worse than what we paint a very bad picture, and a lot of times it ends up being even worse than we say. And so, like, we're not even like fear mongering. It's literally usually we're not even painting the picture even as bad as we should be. But, I'm not over here sitting here fear mongering because I have made money throughout all this, and I'm looking forward to everything going down to make even more money, because that's the best time to invest is when there's blood in the streets. But you've got to have cash to be able to do it. But you just can't keep everything in cash, or else that's what I like to call going broke safely. So sorry about that. I'll let you.
No worries. No, it's interesting, Artem. So this is 2 years, of course, and you see there's basically zero A-rated issuances of corporate debt. And then if you go to 2 years, it gets a little bit better, actually, because it's probably more issuance of debt 2 to 5 years that are issued in corporate debt. But still, look at that big, massive, like even rated below triple B, which is basically rated as junk, you have almost 50% of the corporate issuance is junk rated here. And then you go to now we're at 5 to 7 years. So you see, the longer the years are here, the more the less likely the corporations are to pay their bills according to the rating agency's own numbers. And now here you can see we're basically, what are we at here? 50, 63, 70, no, 67. We're about 70% of 5 to 7 years of junk rated. And then you go up to 7 to 13 years on the issuance. Like now you can actually see the solvency. So basically in default, the triple C rated is now 10% of all that is already in default. And that's a serious problem. And of course, now we're above 70% here in the numbers of junk rated, and the rest is triple B rated, which is just above junk. So and take a look at here, like there's probably not too much issuance that are between 13 to 20 years right now. So you're looking at all of it that is issued is triple B rated, and then there's nothing on more than 20 years. Now, I just wanted to show
and that is a very detailed graph. So for those of you who are listening, when John is clicking through and going through these infographics, everything is interactive, everything is very intuitive, and that comes straight from your report, does it not?
Yeah, this is my report. So my report is actually available for everybody that's on Discord or want it. It's so TET is basically, you go to my website, you go under my shop, and you look for the Global Risk Report 2020. And if you use my coupon code TET, so the Economic Truth TET, you get 75% off of that report, which is set at 99% because it's a lot of hours. I used 3 months to put together all this information, and I think it's highly valuable for most people that have investments to make sure that what kind of risks are out there that they might not be seeing, and then maybe not. I'm not a financial advisor, so of course this is just my personal opinion, and it says that in the report. But at least it will give you the tools to maybe take a look at what's happening and how that could potentially affect your portfolio, and maybe make some changes based upon the data, just the data that I'm putting out there, because this is just data from S&P, well, all the major indices out there, all the major rating agencies. There's numbers from Bank of International Settlements, IMF, everything that's supposed to be official numbers, right, Tim? So we all know today a lot of people are not trusting.
We sort of glossed over when we mentioned that the BIS was having this like emergency meeting on CLOs and CDOs, but the BIS of Bank International Settlements, it's its own country inside of Switzerland. So it's sort of like the Vatican's own sovereign territory, diplomatic immunity inside of there. And it acts as the central bank for all the central banks. And so these are some very important guys and mainly guys.
Jabba the Hutt is over there. No, sorry, Augustine Carstens.
Yeah,
head of the BS.
Yeah, let's cut to a video. And let me blow this video up. Yeah. Let me cut to a video. This is the current head, which is actually, I believe it's the head of the Australian bank. I think his name's John Lowe, and he's going to start talking about how basically the unconventional is now the conventional, which is something we have heard before, but here it is coming straight from the mouth of the.
Do I need to stop my sharing, Tim?
I think I can automatically just override you.
Okay, perfect. All right.
You've been overridden.
Okay.
Let's see.
Unconventional monetary policy tools. It is clear
can you hear that through yours? I want to make sure I was.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can.
All right, cool.
That the innovations engineered by central banks in response to the great financial crisis played a key role in the global economic recovery.
Yeah,
the global
standpoint. What does an assessment of these policies tell us about how they worked, their positive and negative effects, expected and unexpected consequences?
Oh, we've got nice soothing voices, so you can trust us. And just because we help fund the Nazis doesn't mean that you shouldn't like us.
Crisis created extraordinary challenges for central banks and required new policy approaches as conventional tools ran out of steam. Many central banks introduced unconventional tools like negative rates and asset purchases, having had limited experience with how they perform in practice.
Well, the committees looked at research, central bankers, academics, and market practitioners for these complementary reports, which synthesize their views on the collective strengths and weaknesses.
We have people that talk with such nice voices, but even though we help fund, literally 87% of their funding in World War II came from the Reich Bank being the bank that from the Nazis. And how did they pay them? They paid them their interest in gold. How do they get their gold? They stole it from the Jews. They stole it from rating it from everybody else around. But we have nice, soothing voices. Yeah. We're just
actually
a bunch of nerds.
Yeah, and actually Basel III made gold actually top tier 1 asset again, which it should have been all along. So basically, gold is money now.
So what was the other one? Like the U.S., like the Federal Reserve now? Was that the other?
No, the actual excessive reserves with the central bank, I believe, is also a top tier 1 asset, which is basically just digital fake money. Here's an unconventional monetary theory. Come on, yeah, print money. That's all you got to do.
So for those of you on the audio right now, and if you are watching this on video, and for me personally, I watch very few videos, and mainly everything I do is listening and auditory. So this is available too. If you guys go to the website, and we'll probably have the links down below. But if you go Tim Picciott with the Liberty Advisor, and right now almost everything I've done has been on audio as well. So John was having fun with his money cannon, shooting it at the camera, and I guess that's almost more just like a regular conventional thing now. I mean, that's just
exactly. News. It's kind of old news. So sorry for that, Tim.
They don't even call it. And then now it's not money printing because that's what we say it is. But even with this, I mean, the Dow falls 350 points Friday to cap the worst week for Wall Street since the financial crisis. And when you think about this, at the very end of the market, I mean, it's just complete whipsaw.
They're trying to cut in. They don't agree with you, Tim.
Okay,
they're trying to tell us what's right.
Shut up, CNBS. So that was CNBC that was playing. Then we got other headlines here.
CNBS.
Yeah, I've been on the CMBS train for a while, but yeah, we got ex-Fed Governor Warsh sees coordinated global central bank action soon in response to coronavirus. And I'll be shocked. I'm actually somewhat surprised that we haven't seen more action. Like, yeah, we did see the Fed. I mean, where is it? Somewhere around here. I mean, the Fed came out and said that they're going to do whatever it takes. But even with that, I mean, the market basically just completely just shrugged that off. And now let's go to the pre-market action over here. See what's going on in the pre-market. So we've got the S&P 500 showing a slight down. I mean, basically it's flat, but negative 2.82 implied open. So
well, that was the same. That was the same as it was last time, wasn't it? Just
okay.
a slight down.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but which I think last time it was like the S&P or the Dow was supposed to be down 100, and right now it shows the Dow down 38. But I would expect to have a massive update after. I mean, not that we have like too much really to go off of historical data to see.
No, man. If you actually go on historical data, though, Tim, usually there's actually, if you go to Wikipedia, there's actually like the biggest ups and down days in history. And there you actually do find the biggest ups and downs comes like through financial calamities. So it's weird that we haven't seen actually a big uptick yet, Tim. And that really surprises me heavily, to be honest with you. That it seems like it's just out of control right now. There's no way that they can, contain this downward trend right now.
This contagion. There's lots of things that they can't contain right now.
Yeah, the debt contagion can't be contained anymore, and it's it's basically has infected every human being on this planet, pretty close, where everybody's indebted, and everybody's gonna die from go bankrupt. That's basically the monetary death that's gonna happen to everyone because we created these whole. Fiat. I believe the next thing that's going to come, Tim, is they're going to issue a new currency and say, like, no, this is not fiat.
Well, and speaking of new currency, but some people, I mean, hopefully our listeners know this, but the Bank of International Settlements has something that they trade in amongst themselves right now called the special drawing right, or the SDR. And it's off the top of my head, I think it's about 50% dollar. It's probably about 30% euro, and then maybe 5% the yuan, some other little currencies like the Swiss francs sprinkled in there.
Yeah. Just 1 minute, Tim. Just keep talking. I'll be right back.
Okay. Well, so you interrupted me to tell me to keep talking. Okay. Well, that makes it a little bit tougher. So with the special drawing right, they sort of, that is what we're guessing is going to eventually be sort of the one world currency. So maybe you still transact in your actual country's native currency, but it's tied to this SDR. So it's a fiat currency made up of other fiat currencies. And then you go back and take a look at what so John right now has a user's guide to the SDR. Is that one of the books that you got for it was like a bajillion-dollar book that you managed to?
Yeah, $500. This is it.
So it cost you 500 or you?
Yeah. This is like a book out of a library. As you can see here, it was Hartford Graduate Center that it came out. Somebody took it out of the library because this is the actual manual that the Treasury Secretary of any country would have. This same manual is actually what so
that's pretty sweet. That's probably gonna be worth some money someday. If
it's one of the few big awesome books that I have. I also have one on the Exchange Stabilization Fund that the United States has. So it's just like a collector's item for us economic geeks there. And this is actually from 1995. It shows that it was put into the library. So it's very, very interesting. But Tim, I just wanted, because we kind of interrupted a little bit into what we were talking about with the derivatives. I don't want to know if you want to let me just get a little bit back into it quickly before we kind of put an end to talking about all this derivative stuff.
Let's get back into it.
Yeah, because I think that there's a couple more numbers that we need to go through here quickly before we kind of end the whole, derivatives are insane in the first place. But we can talk a little bit more about the derivatives after this. I'm going to show you a couple of more charts. And here is one chart that, of course, indicates what I showed above, which shows the speculative grade rated versus the non-speculative grade. So you can see deterioration in the underlying collateral and the actual valuation of it. So you can see there's only investment grade now is 21.41% of all issued debt in 2018. And it's, down from right in 2010, which was the year after the financial crisis hit its worst. The investment grade was at 72.73%. So you can kind of see a massive, collapse here in itself. And then if we go down here, Tim, we're going to show our viewers a chart that's just going to really, well, actually, it's the same chart as the Federal Reserve had on their website. And I think they got the numbers from the same exact place that I have. Sorry, I'm just looking through this. These are all the banks here. I think I'm still at the banks. Hold on here. Sorry about my little delay here. I'm just basically I'm gonna show you the chart about derivatives here in 1 second, and yeah, here it's coming. So here you can see one more up here. Sorry guys for keeping you delayed here. Yeah, this is the chart here. This is like an amazing chart that just shows you how crazy the issuance of collateralized loan obligations versus the collateralized debt obligations that was issued back in 2018, no, in 2008 crisis or pre-2008 crisis. As you can see, it hits its peak here.
And let people know, for the people that are listening. So we've got two different graphs here. One's the CLOs, one's the CDOs.
One is the CDOs, one is the CLOs, and the CDOs here, you could see it hit the peak in 2007. It hit its peak in issuance, and as you can see, it was 145.
Let some of the people who can't see, let the people who are listening to it right now, let them know. So it's just like a gigantic, like you're going on a roller coaster all the way up, right?
Yeah, it's the hockey stick moment that they tried to do with climate change. This is the real climate change here, boys. This is the financial climate change, if you can call it that. The temperature of the financial market is basically boiling over here with all the CLO issuance, and it's ridiculous. Like the number of CDOs that were issued at the peak of the market in 2007 was $148 billion. And if you take a look here, it just takes off. And actually, the CLOs was issued as well back here in 2007. They actually peaked out at 291.4. But then it just took off. Basically, it was just corporate loan. It was driven. What has been driven by? It's been driven by share buybacks, Tim. And talking about the stock markets, the massive blow up. This is what's been driving, because the share buybacks has been fueled by corporates, taking on a whole bunch of debt, then buying back their own shares with that debt. And so basically, it's just pure financialization. Nothing of real value is created, and it's totally insane. But at the peak now, this is 2019. So far in 2019, I don't have the full 2019 numbers yet. But in 2019, it was as much issued as $605.8 billion worth of these. So it's about almost 5 times more of issuance of the collateralized loan obligations versus the CDOs. So it's pretty insane, just that number. And then if you bring it back to, if you go up here, Tim, I'm just going to show you one last thing from my report. This, I feel there's a lot of good tidbits here and a lot of good charts. I actually had James Turk getting back to me. He really liked the report. I had a World Bank economist saying that my report was fantastic.
Let people know. I mean, James Turk, he's the founder of Gold Money. I think he's been in the space for a long time, just absolute OG in the precious metal space. So, I mean, this is a big time guy. Also one of the headliners of the TDV summit at in Acapulco. So very big time guy, and he had a lot of good things to say. Unfortunately, I messed up the interview we did with him, so we'll have to get another one with him because the audio didn't come through. But we might play that at a later date if I can salvage any of that. Yeah,
and here, Tim, this is the funniest thing. So let's go take a look at these share buybacks here. So you see some some names that are quite familiar. MasterCard did a 8 billion, so that was 2.7% of their shares in a buyback. You got Newmont. Let's see if there's any other ones that you recognize there, Tim. Sorry, I'm just taking a little while to go through them. Chubb Edwards is a massive infrastructure company. There is, if you go down here,
I think that's the insurance. I think that's the insurance company, Chubb.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So
yeah, it's like one of my friends. I think his sister works for them. So actually, Warren Buffett, I think, is tied to that company as well.
Of course. And then you got Intel, bought 8.7% of the shares. And this is an additional one. So you can see here, this is throughout the year of 2019. They actually did twice a share buyback, and this was in October. They probably did one earlier as well. So just to show you, Black & Decker, Microsoft, Oracle, Callaway, the golf manufacturer,
Do you have
Manpower Group,
you have GE on there, by any chance?
GE. Well, we got Wells Fargo here talking about Wells
I'm looking them
Fargo.
up right. I'm looking them right up right now. So GE
Yeah.
spent and this is from an article back in 2018. So they had spent $24 billion on buybacks, averaging
Yeah.
at $30 a share. And
There's another
today-
Wells Fargo buyback.
So today they're trading at $10.88 a share, and they spent $24 billion at an average share price of $30. So not a great use of investor capital.
Well, and you got to remember, like the whole downturn, Tim, in my point of view, started when they started their financial lending arm, GE Capital. I think that was the biggest mistake that they could ever have done. But you see that with all these corporations that are out there, because people can't buy their products, like Home Depot, we got Canadian Tire in Canada, Best Buy. Almost everybody has now a credit card attached to their corporation. So they're basically become money lenders because nobody can afford their products with the current salaries. So they have to go into debt and basically massive, 19 to 23% interest here. So Apple, Costco, everybody's involved in Ally, Johnson & Johnson. So yeah, Best Buy.
At this point, it'd probably be quicker to name the big S&P 500 companies that aren't doing massive share buybacks, because I mean, basically they all are. And that so kind of like at a higher level, what's going on here is that let's say you make $1 million a year and you have 1 million shares outstanding. So right now your earnings per share would be $1. So you're making $1 million, you have $1 million a share. So you take the amount you have outstanding versus the amount of shares or amount of money you made, you got $1 a share. Now let's say you still make $1 million, but you were able to buy back 10% of your shares. So let's say there's 900,000 shares now instead of having 1 million. Well, now your earnings per share would actually go up. I mean, I don't know, like 1.1. So you're looking at $1.10 earnings per share instead of having $1 per share. But you didn't earn any more money. You just have less shares now outstanding. And I made a joke about this the other day on another podcast I did where I was saying, yeah, it's sort of like like in Bitcoin, it was a crypto podcast. I'm like, it's sort of like in Bitcoin, I guess, when you have Peter Schiff, when he ever loses his password, and now all of a sudden all those Bitcoin are now gone. And so now it would technically relatively make the rest of the Bitcoin market even more scarce. But whenever we can make a kind of rib on Peter Schiff, we like to do that. Even though I do agree with a lot of his economic analysis, just not necessarily how to trade it, and obviously nothing on the crypto side of things.
No, and that's where actually James Turk, he does promote crypto and buying crypto because he understands it. He is actually one of the old guys that actually have looked into it and taken some interest to it. And
but then again, gold money though, they don't actually really take I believe they use BitPay, and so if you let's say give them $10,000 in Bitcoin, they're actually then turning around and then selling that and then getting the fiat, which is actually a smarter way to do it if you know your clients do have Bitcoin, because you're paying a lot less than you do on a credit card. It's instantaneous, just a much better way to do that.
But also his portfolio that he was showing when he did the presentation had I believe it was like 5 or 10% crypto in it. So actually he is promoting holding crypto as well, on top of buying their gold, which again I'm not a big fan of gold that is traded with something. You might have it or you might not have it, don't know exactly if you have it and so on, right? So I'm always a fan of holding the physical thing in my own hands, being able to access it at any time. There might be storing it in some gold vault, but still even
if you've got millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars, I mean, especially in silver, I mean, it's very hard to hold on to hundreds of thousands of dollars of silver without worrying somebody coming into your house and breaking it. So I mean, it's not there's pros and cons for everything. So that's the thing 100%. To understand with all this stuff.
100%, Tim, and that's the reason why a lot of people want to have it accessible at a Brinks or at other storages around the world, of course. I think Gold Money, they have Toronto, they have Singapore, they have something in New York, I believe. So they have it spread out. But Tim, I just wanted to, before we get all done, I still got some interesting CLO stats here, and these stats are actually from none other than the Federal Reserve's own website here. As you can see, it's the federalreserve.gov website, and who owns U.S. CLO securities is the article there. And as you can see here, this is very interesting. So you have the top holder of it. It's actually insurance companies. Tim, being an insurance company, isn't it being very conservative the most important thing? Like, is really like holding a CLO derivative very conservative for a financial insurance company? I don't know, Tim. This is just my.
Well, I mean, I don't know what they're if
thoughts.
they're using it to hedge different bets, but then if they're hedging bets, then you have to then wonder if that's actually counterparty risk that can be paid off. So if you go back to 2008, and then you had Goldman Sachs were selling this, but they were in their own words saying, we need to get this dog shit off our books, and they were talking about this investment. I believe it's called Abacus, and so then I believe they sold that to AIG. And then then they went and then bet against the same thing that they sold to AIG. And then AIG, when they went under, then couldn't pay Goldman Sachs. But then luckily the Treasury Secretary at the time, Hank Paulson, was former Goldman Sachs. And then he was replaced by Timothy Geithner, who was, very close with Goldman Sachs as well. And so then essentially AIG got bailed out, so that way they can pay Goldman Sachs, and then we helped get Trump into office, so then that way he could then surround himself by people from Goldman Sachs, like Steve Mnuchin, who's now the Treasury Secretary, who also is now part of the new coronavirus task force, and along with Larry Kudlow, the chief economic advisor, are two of the key guys in the coronavirus task force. And everything they're doing is just engineered to try to game the stock market, going up and up and up. But everything is good money after bad. It's funny. Speaking of good money after bad, I'm actually looking at Drudge right now, the Drudge report, and it's saying that Tom Steyer spent $3,373 per vote and earned 0 delegates. So maybe he is pretty qualified to be the next president, because here he is wasting all that money on and I guess speaking of wasting money, you got Bloomberg up there too. Mini Mike spent $500 million to go to his own roast and get absolutely nothing accomplished. And we did have also Joe, just kind of getting a little bit sneaking in some geopolitics here. Joe Biden ended up winning big yesterday. I think he got 49 or 50% of the vote. I think Bernie Sanders was at 19. I'm just trying to scroll down here. Yeah, 48.6 for Joe Biden, 19.9 for Bernie Sanders, and Tom Steyer at 11.3. Which, and then I also saw something where the African American vote for what's his name, Biden, was huge. It was 40-50%, even though he's the guy who basically helped author the 94 crime bill and the 94 drug bill, which essentially devastated the Black and minority communities. But hey, he was with Obama, so that's I guess everybody cares about over there. And so what do we got pulled up over here on screen? Is it Deutsche Bank or is it?
Well, so this is interesting. This is, remember we were talking about the actual. You were talking about AIG falling down, and that was caused by something called a credit default swap, because AIG, they were doing these insurance products, which is, so this is interesting. Let me just quickly tell you the story. So who invented the credit default swap was actually Blythe Masters of former JP Morgan, which, was over there, she also.
And then she went on to go work in crypto, and I think just got out of some crypto. But no, she was working for some sort of crypto company. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, she's a really evil lady, and but the reason why it was called a credit default swap and not credit default insurance was because they wanted to not go under regulation of insurance or being a part of insurance. So basically, they created the credit default swap being a insurance product, but now instead of you just insuring your own thing once, it's basically. A CDS is basically 1,000 people insuring my house, and then it burns down, and the insurance company doesn't have the money because over 1,000 people insured the one house. And that's what happened with the CDS. And here I'm just showing you, this is from Europe. This is the Boursorama over there. They have all the derivatives tradings of all Europe. But this is the Deutsche Bank 5-year credit default swap. So you could buy a 5-year credit default swap. It costs whatever they call it, basis points. That is the cost to actually insure it. But here you can see it actually peaked. This is back in mid 2019, but it was also all the way up back, I believe in 2018, it hit 250 or something. Now, of course, it's very little risk, but suddenly you're seeing to see the peak up in risk here again of this credit default swap. So it's starting to cost more again to actually insure against Deutsche Bank failures, because Deutsche Bank went up in price, but now the problem is they drastically went down in price again when you had the whole collapse, which, the German stock markets, well, what are they down now? Let's have a quick look here. The German stock market, the DAX, is down about the same as the United States Dow Jones. It's 12.44%. So it's very heavily. It's getting, of course, hit. A lot of it is the industrial side, because Germany, like the major corporations there, like Bayerische Motorwagen and Audi and all these guys, are very reliant on Chinese investments. But if you go and take a look here, so you look at year-on-year return, you'll find, let's see here, if we go down, here's Deutsche Bank here. So Deutsche Bank hasn't lost too much, but they were all the way up at 10 euros per share here, but now they're down at 7.88 again. So they're moving downwards again. They're actually starting to get in trouble here, I believe, because I think the technical level was 6%. 6 euros. So here, let's pull up the chart here, so just can show you how the share price is. We're gonna even go to old time here and show you the old time chart, whatever data they have, the data back all the way back here. Let's just 1 second. It's February 1st, 2000 that they have the data from. And as you can see, the share price has, dropped drastically, from the 2000s here. It was even, it was up at 60. What is that, Tim, for a drop? If you look at even just 60 euros and drop it down to 7.88, that's almost like 90% drop, isn't it, Tim? I believe, right? So it's just an insane drop. And of course, Deutsche Bank is
90%.
Yeah, and Deutsche Bank is the actual derivatives arm of JP Morgan in Europe, and they have 43 trillion-ish on their balance sheet of derivatives that are still laying there, which is mass amount. Like I believe that the GDP, the total size of the German economy, I think it's, don't get me, it's probably wrong, but I think it's somewhere between 5 to 7 trillion.
So it's like most stats. So it's like most stats then. Okay, if it's probably wrong, but I think it's also important to point out that the German economy, they have a very, very old demographics over there. So I mean, the average age of their workers is very, very old, and so not a lot of people to be able to replace them. And then when your entire economy is based on a Ponzi scheme, like it is here, like it is over there, that you always need more and more young blood, that was one of the reasons why they were trying to flood in all the migrants, so then that way they could have all these younger migrants who that way they can then get them to vote a certain way and then use them just like they use over here in America, different refugees. Not trying to make this all political, but I mean there are demographic reasons for why a lot of this stuff is going on. And I was trying to pull up the clip and I forgot the actress's name, but it was the movie The Big Short, and I think she used to be married to or played a part with Ashton Kutcher, but I can't remember the girl's name. But anyways, they're at a card table and it shows two people playing blackjack, and it goes, they're trying to explain what a credit default swap was, and goes, now let's pretend that you and I are betting on who those two. So we got two. So let's say John and I are playing a game, and then you've got somebody else who's watching us play a game. Now it'd be the two people who are watching us play a game. They go and make a bet on the outcome of the game that John and I are playing. And then you have people who are making bets on the people who are making bets on the outcome of John and I playing game. And then you got people who are making bets on the people who are making bets, the people who are making bets. And that's sort of what the credit default swap is that it's all these intertangled web that there's absolutely no way to actually accurately forecast how intertwined and interwoven all these different intricacies of this are. Yep.
Yeah, Tim, in 2013, the Cyprus bank failure, Larnaca Bank and Bank of Cyprus, that was actually a derivatives bet that they used credit default swaps to bet against the Greek debt. But then, of course, the Greeks got bailed out by the ECB. And talking about corporations, because we're talking about like corporate debt here, that's the CLOs, that's the underlying assets in most of the CLOs. And just take a look at this is the ECB's balance sheet here. And if you take a look, the number is just ridiculous in the amount of, hold on here, it's called AC, so securities of Euro denominated residents. So basically resident is also a corporation, because corporation and person is the same thing, right? So you can see they hold $1.16 trillion worth, and you can see a massive massive buy up of these debt that are, the whole Eurozone has not grown at all. And you're seeing, of course, the banking system there, especially Deutsche Bank, Commerzbank, Societe Generale, ABN AMRO, you see Banque Populaire, you see UniCredit, and all these banks around in Europe are really struggling right now. And you've seen actually in Italy is one of the worst, actually, where they're doing a whole bunch of bank mergers. But the thing is also, Tim, as you said, the whole demographic cliff, we have that in most modern Western countries. And the problem is that even on top of, having more people needing to feed into the system that you're saying, who's going to buy the assets that they need to sell off, the baby boomers to retire, Tim, as well? Think about that, right? So that's another thing, who's going to buy the houses that are super overvalued that, I think it was somebody saying that the house is now 14 times more expensive than it was back in the day. And of course, salaries hasn't increased 14 times. It's been a lot more stagnant than that. So you're seeing a lot of big problems around the world with these demographic issues that are underlying. And of course, those create, on top of that, create pressures, that are deflationary to the economy. And deflation, you can't have that with any central banks around the world, Tim, right? So it's just we're in a debt spiral that is, fighting against. It's like two tectonic plates. We got one, I'll get you to your book there, but it's two tectonic plates. We got deflation and inflation, and they're just, pressuring on each other. And suddenly you get a 10.1 earthquake that's going to, eviscerate the earth, while, it's either of them is going to win. And I believe inflation will win, because Ben Bernanke in 2002 said that, we can, understand
as
that
long as
always
the
the
tectonic
printing
plate
presses will win.
As long as the tectonic plate sends California into the ocean and gives me some beachfront property in Arizona, then I think that'd be a big win for all of humanity if California just actually, but hopefully not in 2 weeks from now when I'm going to be out.
Poor G. Edward Griffin. Our big guy, G. Edward Griffin lives in California. Come on, you can't be that evil. Poor guy.
You know what? He could take. He's about 88 years old. He could take a hit for the team if he's at that. I mean, there's enough.
Now Tim is getting really terrible. We should probably quit right away because Tim is
But anyway, speaking of demographics, here's a book I read a while ago called The Demographic Cliff, and essentially it goes on to say the average person at least in America spends the most in their lifetime at age 46. Take a look at the baby boom. The baby boom was from 1940s. I believe it was from where was it? I think it was from 1942, I believe, is when it first started. Yeah. So, I mean, it was 1946. And so if you add, 1946, and then you add 46 years to that, you get 1992. That's right when Bill Clinton was coming into office. And so essentially Americans were hitting their peak spending. A lot of the spending was that a lot of the economic boom that we saw was not only because of the invention of the internet, thanks to Al Gore, obviously kidding. It was really Joe Biden. Joe Biden is responsible for everything that's ever been done, if you've ever listened to any of the debates. But really, all kidding aside, the baby boom then peaked out from their peak spending years actually in 2008. That's right when obviously we had the 2008 financial crisis. And that whole thing ended up getting papered over, and they realized there's this huge demographic problem. I mean, just go back to Social Security. There used to be, I believe, 164 people paying in for every one person collecting. Yeah. Now it's like basically 2 to 1. And so eventually it's going to be 1 to 1. And I was, sort of in jest saying this. I'm like, well, maybe all the coronavirus could be a good thing for the economy if it only kills off 70 and 80-year-olds who are trying to get Social Security, because then that's like the only way we can fund this stuff. And I mean, guys like Bill Gates say this stuff, and they get cheers on TED Talks. And so I'm just trying to make some gallows humor out of what's going on. Obviously, I love G. Edward Griffin, and he's I've mentioned him probably 10 times a day, and I've got his book signed behind me, and he's one of the main mentor and all. I wouldn't say not like direct mentor, but one of the guys who I referenced the most. But anyways, hopefully it's just, I guess he's not Southern California though, is he? Is he more northern, middle?
Well, he's more up in the he's more up in the mountains in Paso. That's what. But
we're talking about LA.
He also lives in Thousand Oaks though, which is right by LA, unfortunately. So that's his main residence.
Well, we'll get him off in a helicopter before that.
We'll go and grab him. But as you can see here, Tim, if anybody's paid attention to my hat, I don't think we talked about it, but we were talking about what a lot of people might call a black swan event. But the thing is, like, a lot of these black swans are totally predictable as well. I think, you know, the CLOs and everything has just been a massive buildup of unsustainability. And of course, it's going to come down really hard when it does happen, and when nobody's going to be able to get their collateral up, because if the collateral dries up, the underlying collateral in these things, you know, dry up, there's nobody that could pay their debt anymore of these corporations because they're zombies already. And then suddenly you get the coronavirus hitting now.
Well, and just think, there's a Bank of International Settlements. Here they are meeting on this week where all hell is breaking loose. And what are they talking? They're talking about the stock market. They're talking about the bond market. What are they talking about? They're talking about CLOs. Everything is just fucking collapsing. And that's the one thing that they're talking about. And that's the one thing that John's been screaming about. And to his credit, I haven't really been talking too much about CLOs. I'm talking about the corporate debt, triple Bs, and
which is underlying, like that's the underlying of the CLOs, right? So
there's like 20 different black swans that could be unleashed at any time. And the real black swan was the coronavirus that then was just help expedite all the other. Basically, there's an ignition switch to all these others. And you know, I'm not really super worried about the coronavirus, but if the thing is, sometimes perception is not sometimes perception.
Hey, if the coronavirus hits, that's all you need. Free cash for everyone.
But no, we do appreciate everyone that's watching. I always see at least 7 people watching now on the Tim Show with the Liberty Advisor channel. This will probably be on World Alternative Media later on. So if you guys want to make sure that we're always going to be live, we want to make sure you catch all of our live stuff. Make sure you join our Discord, which you can find that. You can also find that at the Tim Show with the Liberty Advisor. We'll have that linked in the comment section or in the description below. Because you know, John is pretty active on there. If he wants to, are you sharing the screen right now so you can show people?
As you can see, this is our Discord channel, so you can kind of see, like, we actually, there's somebody new joining right now. Fantastic, Anthony, welcome. That's great news. As you can see, we've been discussing. I'm just going to go up here. We've been discussing shortages that are starting to happen in the United States, where people are panicking. You know, I'm getting a lot of Facebook commercials for mouth bands now. What do you call mouth masks now? For
like the N95 mask.
Yeah, they're selling that like crazy right now. And they're trying to push that on me, of course, because I've been posting a bunch.
Let's go to the article section too, because I mean that's
so this is like you could see we've been talking here, we've been discussing what's happening with S&P, what's happening in markets. But this is the coolest one. So me and Tim, we are always like almost every day, I would say me and Tim are.
Now this is a little bit different. Now of course it shows this one. So most of the stuff is all financial geek economic stuff, but this one I put there because I thought it was funny. And it showed that there's 119 people that are quarantined in a brothel in Spain because I guess one of the female talent got diagnosed with coronavirus, and so
somebody's unlucky
in place. So I'm sure there's a lot of guys who are in pretty big trouble right now. Who
that's terrible.
How come Daddy didn't come home? Oh, he's locked in. And so what we do? So I getting sick of Facebook and different social media sites, and so when I go through, I save something, I save it to Evernote, then shoots it over to this article section of Discord, and John is probably shooting over 20-30 things a day. I'm probably shooting over about a dozen or so, and then it also creates a repository where we can then see what things later on, and especially inside my own Evernote, so that way I have it, because a lot of these things, I mean, Google makes it so that way you can't even search for things anymore, because the things
for sure. So this is perfect, actually, having that. We basically have a massive archive that you can search up. You could search up all the way to the back if you want in this archive, and it's fantastic. So you could see all the articles. We could pull everything up. Actually, I was scrolling at him. Look at this article that they're just trying to pull through now in legislation in Australia, which is insane. They're banning cash. They want to ban physical cash payments over $10,000 in Australia, which is just getting crazy. But this is what they want, though. They want to ban cash because if they can ban cash, they can go negative, because now everybody's stuck in the banking system. None of our money is ours anymore, and the banks control every single
with a social credit. Then they can tie it with social credit, and then at that point you're checkmated. And then I guess they also need the guns too, but they're trying hard in that one too. So
100%. No, it's those two things. It's like cash is actually privacy right now, even though that you might hate, we might actually hate the whole system itself. this like fiat currency, but still cash actually provides privacy for people because it can't be really tracked at all.
And we mentioned that the big banks are over in Europe are hoarding cash and buying out all the vaults because right now they have to pay money if they keep their cash at the bank or the ECB, whereas if they just have their own warehouse, they have to, there's embedded cost to that too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I actually have that in my presentation that I did in Acapulco, just showing. And of course, when Switzerland went to negative 75%, no 0.75%, they actually everybody was hoarding cash in the vaults to get the big gold and silver. So it's just like unintended consequences that they don't really want to have happen. These banks, because they need to ban cash. They really need to ban cash because if they don't ban cash, they're gonna have a serious problem, and that's where we're all going here, Tim. It's towards that. If we
They
don't,
they should just ban the coronavirus, and then it will just stop all the coronavirus. But we probably do have to get going soon because I've got another interview coming up at once. So I gotta make sure this.
Yeah, and we're over an hour now, aren't we, Tim? So
I think we still have 4 minutes, so we can shoot the breeze for another 3 minutes. But anyways, I also want to get this one up on World Alternative Media.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here for a second and then go back to us here. But yeah, it's pretty interesting, Tim. Follow us on the Discord channel because that's where we really are creating a great community now. You can ask questions, if you have them, and then Tim could get back to you with advice later on. He can't, of course, say anything directly on the chat, but he can get in touch with Tim there, and you could get a lot of great information from Tim that he could help you with, of course. So it's a great way for everybody to stay connected. And of course, a lot of the people that are connected on there too also are super interested in talking money and economics. So we're kind of creating a community of like-minded people there as well that really wants to understand money and economics. To then,
we got some bigger name people already in the community. I mean, like Anthony Blanchard's in there.
Yeah, and then we got Chris Karabats, of course, is a great guy, a fantastic guy as well. I think we're trying to get on. Michael Nimitz is on there. Mike on Fire, he's fantastic. And then we got actually a fantastic forex trader that I know, a young guy from Russia. I don't know if he's watching or not. Sergey, he's just I don't know.
Is he the stock barracuda, or is that somebody?
No, that's he's actually Real Talk. RealTalk. He is fantastic. He's a very smart guy, very bright young guy. He was actually, his parents were chased out of Russia by Putin. So a lot of interesting stories there that I got insight from him. And he is like an economics geeks like us. He's going to be on an even better playing field understanding economics than us, Tim, because he started he's 19, 20 now. So he is like way before us even, when we started to really understand money and finance. So it's just really cool to have all these people as a part of the community. People are just, talking a lot forth and back, bouncing ideas sometimes. And then we got our own, we got chats for a lot of different topics as well.
Or if nothing else, we still have the article section. But anyways, I've got my daughter knocking on the door. I've got to get this up because it has to process. Otherwise, I can't get the next interview done. But we definitely appreciate everybody listening. Make sure that when you see people talk about collateralized debt obligations, that you heard it here first, that you heard it from John Snyson first, and tell your friends. And make sure if you're watching us on World Alternative Media, that you also check out the Liberty Advisor channel, because
I run out of cash. It's over. It's game over.
Game over. That is the solution to everything. That's not even the unconventional policies anymore, because that is just old hat by now. But anyways, we'll probably who knows what this next week will bring. Maybe we'll just do some random pop-ins, because in order to the show. But yeah, so we'll probably just do some random pop-ins here now, making different videos. So make sure to follow us on different platforms. Go over to the Discord. And but anyways, again, this is Tim Picciott and John Snyson with the Tim and John Show. This is episode number 3, wrapping up. And we picked quite the time to really kick this off, because we were talking about doing this right before everything went nuts. And so, what a time to be documenting this ongoing.
Yeah, good. Right in the financial crisis 2.0.
Yep. All right. See you guys.
Yeah. Have a good one.
All right. I got to figure out how to stop this now.